When you're a pro, you got to do a little bit of everything. A little, and even a little. And it helps to have something that works as hard as you do. That's why Valspar has a paint for every job, every room, every time. Valspar, you make it happen, we make it possible. Pros, head to Lowe's today and talk to a pro rep about getting up to 10 free gallons of Valspar through our paint trial program. Exclusions apply. See valsparpro.com for details.
The U by Moen Smart Faucet is the only faucet that gives you exactly what you ask for. Ask Moen to top off my nightcap. Pouring half an ounce of water at 54 degrees. Visit Moen.com for more.
Welcome to our Thursday evening edition of The Outer Realm with myself, Michelle Derochers, and my little bubbly companion, Amelia Pisano. We are broadcasting live here on the UPR and Talk Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and this has been made possible by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee who do partially sponsor our show. So give them a big thank you, big shout out, and grab a cup while you're listening to the show. So, Little Bubbles, what are you doing?
Just sending you the link to the live so people can watch and listen if they'd like, rather than just stream. It's up to you. And we just shared it, so that's you.
Yes, it is. And I
just shared it all over Facebook and everywhere. So
okay. All right. I'm going to have to.
That's all I did. Yeah. How was your day?
My day was filled with research and lots of it, actually, because
are we sharing?
I've got two different shows to research for. So it's been a little bit crazy. And surprisingly, I had a client today who said, well, can you just close my file? We'll talk about that. She goes, I don't like the energy being all messed up. I said, well, I thought you wanted all the negative energy gone because there's an attachment in the house. And she goes, I don't like how it makes me feel. I was like, oh, that'll be interesting to talk to Bill about that this evening. So I went, oh, But they don't realize that sometimes, that malevolent entities will
It's not
give you
her.
that feeling, that sense of loss, like you're feeling like you're a little bit alone and
Can we
you're something's
can we
missing.
trust that it's her saying
Absolutely
that?
not. But when somebody tells me close it, I have to respect it. I can't just go ahead because I feel like it. I just have to hope that she realizes or that she'll reach out again and say, hey, this is a concern, and can you help me with it again? And maybe I was wrong. So that's that. So, it's kind of disheartening to hear because I don't think people realize, how these things work. And I know we're going to touch on a lot of that this evening as well. And I'm
Interesting
hoping.
because a lot of times with deliverance and exorcism, you need permission. So we just got the boot, literally.
No, I know. I
Oh
know.
boy.
That's it. That's what I mean. It's all we can do now is just take a step back and see what happens, and hopefully the waters won't be too rough. And we just wait. But, claimed that she was having some nightmares and didn't like how she was feeling. And it's like, okay, well, when everything's
Oh
feeling nice and
wow.
bright and light, you got to kind of wonder where the interference may be coming from. So it'll be interesting because I know, speaking with Bill this evening, he's going to touch on some things. And there I go again, gonna do that. Thanks, Bubbly. He's going to.
I don't always speak that way.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that a little bit.
More often than not, I do say gonna and yeah.
Gonna and yeah.
But
And all of a sudden I'm like, yeah,
and you say
gonna.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, where did that one come from? I know it's half me, but
No, yeah is
I
mine.
know. I used to be such an eloquent speaker before I became a housewife.
Me
It was
too.
just different when I worked.
Before I got a co-host named Bubbly.
Yeah, I go all gangster on her now. So it's just I think it's all the rap music I listen to all day long. I believe that it's osmosis and it just like a sponge, right? That sound effect thing. But I know.
I try to catch myself.
I'm trying. I'm trying to catch myself as I speak. Yeah.
It's bad when even the phone is starting to pick up on those words, the keywords, instead, because I'm trying to train this new silly phone of mine, and it's a vocabulary, and I must say those words like more often than not, because now that's what it's picking up as opposed to my regular speech. So it's like, oh, that's just great, just what I freaking need. So anyway, but yeah,
I'm waiting. Is I don't want to say the company. Is it
no.
open? Our mutual phone company? No.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't believe so. No.
Okay. Because I have a cracked screen that I've had since, and no word of a lie, March 20th, which is right when they locked the doors.
My cell guy, yes, he is open. He is open. So you'd have to come out to like.
I'm really loving my phone, and I'm not sure I want to update. I don't want to upgrade it until I absolutely have to, where they're saying it's no longer compatible, then I'll upgrade, because phones are ridiculous and I buy them outright.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have to buy, and there's 3 of us in this house. So you think about that. Like,
oh, I do, because I just had to buy one because the other one just, we were fighting every day. So, Wayne said, why don't you just get another stupid phone? Because I can't listen to this anymore. I'm like, okay, great. Anyway.
I hate setting them up. That's why.
Yeah, it's a pain in the butt, but
even though they do most of it, I don't like it. So yes.
Yes. So we will be bringing our guest on in the next 10 minutes. I thought we would touch a little bit. I try to, maybe touch on some questions that maybe we have received either personally or through the Outer Realm group page. So, do you have any that have come in, or am I going through my personal list?
You can go through yours, because I usually redirect them. I don't take them because I'm not responding to Messenger, and I keep saying that, and I hope the listeners are listening to me. I don't read the messages on Messenger. There's far too many, and it's just I don't know anyone. I don't know when it's spam. If it goes to the Facebook Outer Realm page, then that's great. Or if it goes to Michelle at Canada's Most Haunted, even better. But you sending them to me personally, it's not gonna change anything. You'll be waiting even longer because I don't read them. I literally just delete all of them. Yeah. So
I will eventually
I just wanted to get that clear.
I eventually get them. It just takes some time.
There's posts that I've been tagged on recently, if I may.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
If I may start with one.
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you. There is one that recently posted and said, which I was really, really surprised that it was asked. I was surprised that it had to be asked. When you go to a haunted location, do you bring a spirit entity home with you? Can you? Is it possible? And I was tagged on it, and I'm thinking, we cover this every week, but obviously someone doesn't know because they're posting this.
Right.
So absolutely, yes. And then some. It's all about grounding and protecting yourself before you going in. Yes. But when you come out, you need to brush off, and you need to go through a sort of a ritual where I always clean my hands. For some reason, when I do this, it's like I've wiped myself from everything and just shower myself in light. Just brush myself off like you're brushing dust off. And for myself, I thank God for the protection and all the archangels surround me. I also ask them to shower me in light. These are things that you have to do. And that's just when we're working. These are the things that I do. This isn't, I don't go into homes to investigate hauntings. I mean, I've gone into a few homes with Michelle, but they've been clearings. We already knew what we were getting into. It's a different story. So if you're just going out there to investigate and have fun and you think this will not affect you, please rewind this and listen again and write it down because it will. It can. Not always, but it can. No. It is possible.
Yeah, I mean, some people go out and never have problems, and it's not like you get a problem every time. But I have seen a problem many times, and you just don't want to make sure that you're not that statistic that ends up having a problem. And if you don't want to attract attention to yourself, and you really want to just go out and have a good time and be in somewhat of a controlled environment because maybe you're doing a tour or something, I think it's great. But don't be that person who's just like, oh, I want to feel something. I really want to feel something. Oh, I think I feel something. I mean, they're listening, and that's just the thing. Now, if you're going to a location that has pretty benign spirits or hauntings, I mean, chances are they're grounded there for a reason. But you just don't know if there's something a little darker that's hiding in the background. People think, oh, it's just the family there. But sometimes spirit energy can attract darker things just because that energy is just as much food to a dark entity as human living energy can be.
I was just going to add to that as well. And they do know that you're coming. Don't kid yourself. If there is a malevolent entity there, if there are demonics there, these air quotes have to stop. I don't know where these came from either. I'm going to start sitting on my hands. I think it's because my nails are back. But if you have these entities there, and if you're aware of it, they're aware of you. And they are aware that you're coming. So please just be careful and practice the protection before and after. Always.
Yeah, and it definitely never hurts. That's definite. I will touch on a real quick one that I have been receiving. I've had 3 messages in the last 2 weeks actually on past life regressions. Now, when it comes to regressions, doesn't mean they always work. Not everybody, well, Joe will tell you, yes, you can hypnotize anybody, and maybe, but I've seen people who've really struggled with it, and I think there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And I always recommend having somebody with you, just so, you are in a safe, again, and controlled environment. I once met a woman who went in for hypnosis to be regressed, and it wasn't done properly. So somehow the individual never really closed off with her. And she started suffering from headaches and migraines, and she never obviously didn't regress past a certain point. But I think it takes a degree of time to get to that point. Even on my own journey, of doing past life research on my lineage and my past lives, it took a long time. It took years to get through it all. So just because somebody claims that they can do it and that they can do it really well, you know what? Don't just necessarily believe that, because you never know what kind of information you're actually getting. And some mediums can pick it up very easily as well. You might want to consider that before you start getting into any form of regression therapy. And just do your homework. Look for reviews, look for references, and make your decision after that, because it can be really touchy. You don't like people messing with your psyche or messing with your head.
When Michelle says they didn't close off, it literally means they leave a door open. And that's like walking away from a Ouija board or a seance without closing the circle. You're not going to leave your house and leave the door open. No, exactly. And go away on vacation. This is the same kind of metaphor, that she left the door open and her client was on vacation and came back and went,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And having nightmares, and then started having visits. And, nightmares doesn't always mean a door has been left open, but it just means that something
could just be from the experience.
Something has changed. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, we're going to have our special guest, Bill Bean. Yay, can't wait. And yeah, so let's do that. Let's see if Joe can take us to break, and then we will be back in a few minutes.
Yay.
You're not a dish. You're a man. Most name brand bars.
Welcome back to the Outer Realm, and we are here with our special guest, Bill Bean. Welcome. I'm going to let Amelia bring you in with her bio, and we have to do our bio thing because we want everybody to know all about you.
Always. Yes. As you know, Bill Bean is here. Our guest tonight is a world-renowned exorcist, spiritual deliverance minister, and is known as the spiritual warrior. He's also an internationally known author, lecturer, and paranormal supernatural expert. Please welcome Mr. Bill Bean. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, our pleasure.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yes, we've been looking forward to it. So
we have a million questions.
We had some speed bumps there, but we got it done, right? Thank you so much for being flexible with last week.
Oh
my gosh, not a problem. That's what happens when you're live, right? It's a live show. Things happen.
It's just I feel like I'm in a live show every day of my life, so I've got to deal with somebody and be somebody to somebody every day of my life.
Putting out fires.
Well, I mean, it seems to have started at a very young age for you, like it or not. I think you sort of got pulled into all of this, because we read your book. Why don't you bring us in to that a little bit?
Sure, and I want to thank you both for taking the time to read the books. And
thank you for sending it.
No, my pleasure. I've said this a million times. I couldn't be where I'm at right now had I not been there. So it was a necessary part of the journey. And we'll get into this in a second. Do I wish that I could go back and change some things? Absolutely, but I can't. So I have to move forward. And I didn't choose to do this kind of work. God chose me to do it because of the sufferings that I had endured as a child. And so that entails my family and I moving into this 3-bedroom ranch-style home located in Glen Burnie, Maryland, in a community called Herondale. That's, I've written 7 books. In my first book, Dark Force, I say that it began there, but it actually goes much further back than that. I found that out after I had written the original version of Dark Force. I found out that 2 family members many, many, many years ago had actually conjured these demonic forces.
Oh, and so, that's nice.
Yeah, so it was through invitation and invocation that this all began. And so these demons did come in and create a variety of problems and damage for the family on both sides, many untimely deaths and some of the most horrific and bizarre things that you can imagine. And I also found out that my mother had many paranormal supernatural experiences in her childhood. And at one point in time had actually lived in that very area that my family and I ended up moving into in 1970. So she was already exposed to the area. So I feel the reason that it was so severe for us is because, of course, that conjuring that took place. And then my mother, who again was having these types of experiences in childhood, being exposed to the area. So I feel that there are many facets to this story. You know, again, A, the conjuring, B, the area, which evil was absolutely present and manifest, and the home itself. Evil was already present and manifest in the home. And this is what made it so severe for us as we came into this perfect storm of evil that greatly contributed to the destruction of my family.
That's intense. That's really intense. I've seen your story as well as you know, read again in the book, and your mother seems to have been the brunt of all of this, even though your father really, I mean, boy, he was the one that was really affected. And considering, like, he was, I guess, take out the strongest member first, and then you start working on the weakest links from there, right? Divide and conquer.
You're exactly right. Yeah, you're exactly right, Michelle. And that's what happened. You know, my mother, my parents were both wonderful people. It's so sad and tragic the way their lives ended up, and neither of them lived to see the age of 50. My mother died at the age of 44 from a cerebral hemorrhage. My father was shot to death at the age of 48. And it's really sad. My mother did suffer more than any other person I've ever seen in my life. And so she suffered in the beginning. She was the first to have a paranormal supernatural experience in the house. She was the first one to have an experience. It was shortly after moving in. And it was while unpacking and organizing in the living room. And my father had taken us, I have an older sister and a younger brother. He had taken us with him for the day over to our grandparents to allow my mother to have some peace while she was unpacking and organizing. And it was during the course of this that she felt a presence come into the room. She thought that it was my dad coming back into the house to play a joke on her. And she spun around fully anticipating on seeing him, and to her shock, you know, nothing was there. So she was taken aback, unnerved, frightened, anything that you can imagine that would be in a situation like that, and was eventually able to go back to doing what she was doing when one of the bedroom doors slammed shut by itself, and that was enough to make her go outside and wait until we returned. So that's where it started. And then it gradually escalated into more of these types of incidents, and eventually escalated into violent physical attacks on us by these demonic entities. And my mother was attacked far more. I was attacked quite a bit too, but my mother was attacked far more than I was or anyone else in the family. But you're so right that I think the focus was to get my dad out of there because he was the strong one. My dad was a fearless type of man. He was a man's man, rugged individual, wasn't afraid of anyone or anything, and was always in control of every situation, and suddenly found himself in a situation that he could not control. My parents believed in God, but we had never attended church as children. We were never baptized or anything like that. And back then, you did not freely talk about these types of things like you can now. You know, people would deem you to be crazy, and so you wouldn't dare publicly talk about these types of things back then.
No.
And so my parents were social drinkers, but I think my father's drinking escalated greatly due to the strain and being confounded in his mind by not being able to handle this situation. And it led him into a dark world of alcoholism, to where he became a violent alcoholic who regularly physically abused my mother between the years of 1973 and 1975. The horrific, I mean, nearly killed her on several occasions. I can recall being 8 years old, having to run out of the house for neighbors to get the police called on my father because he was killing my mother. So when you have these types of dynamics taking place, all of this kind of negative garbage, and it's high trauma as well, this feeds demonic forces. So they become empowered off of these types of things. So we had every ingredient there for them to gain in power and then literally suck the life out of us. And so I'll give you a quick layout of the house. The house was located at the bottom of a downhill cul-de-sac, and it had a very large and deep ravine located behind it that stretched for at least 2 miles or maybe more. And the house in the beginning was semi-dilapidated. It had a very ominous look and feel about it. I can recall being 4 years old when we moved in, and my sister was 13. And I recall us standing together in front of the house, looking and just being really frightened, not knowing why, but knowing that it was not good. Whatever had taken place, or what may be taking place there, with the house at that time, we certainly could feel it. And my dad, who was a contractor, did quite a bit of restoration work to the house and made it look good. But making it look good and having it to be good were two different things. So you would enter in through the front door, and the house was always very dark inside. It had this dark brown paneling on the walls, almost black in color. So even on the brightest of days, it was still dark in that house. And you can feel when evil is present and manifest because there's an atmospheric change. The air feels heavy. Sometimes people feel burning or ringing in their ears. They could smell smells of sulfur or rotten types of smells. And these are all associated with the demonic presence. And you can feel those types of things. And you'd come into the living room and you'd make a right down this long hallway, which had a hard tile floor. And I can recall many times laying in bed as a child and hearing footsteps coming down that hallway. And they were so loud that the footsteps would reverberate off of the dark brown paneling on the walls there. So it was just hell. It really was. Pretty much the entire time that we lived in that house, and how in the world we did it for so many years is beyond me, because again, from 1970 to 1975 was hellish enough in just the physical abuse from my father towards my mother, but then you factor in the paranormal supernatural events that were taking place as well. But then when he left us at 75, from 75 until 80 was pure hell, because my mother was being regularly physically attacked from these demonic entities. And it was horrific. It truly was, Michelle. And if there would be one thing that I could go back and change, it would be to go back and change the suffering of my mother.
Yeah. Do you think that, because did you move into a house that this was already present, or do you think because of what happened to your family, it had already attached itself to her, which is maybe why she was the brunt of everything, because that poor woman just endured more than than many people endure. It just seems like it was already rooted and just rooting itself further, and everybody else's collateral damage.
I agree. But again, I also believe that evil was already present and manifest in that house at the same time and the area. So this is what contributed to it being so severe. And there were times that my dad was even physically attacked. And one incident I didn't know, and I wrote about in the latest version, which came out last year, called Dark Force Revisited. My brother had shared with me, and I wasn't home at the time, but my brother was, and he shared with me that one evening my dad had come home in a drunken stupor, and when he came in, my brother was sitting on the couch and saw him come in through the front door, and an invisible force grabbed him and literally threw him through so if you were coming in through the front door, you would enter into the living room, but right in front of the front door, there were a set of wooden doors. It was a closet there, like a coat closet. So it was these sliding wooden doors. And my brother said that something picked him up and threw him right through those wooden closet doors. So
that would have to be a pretty malevolent force. Mind you, the powers of good, it makes you wonder on the flip side, was he coming in to go after your mother again, and did something else intervene to stop him? that may
It's
have
possible,
been,
Michelle. Yeah. I
you
mean,
know.
whatever the case may be, my brother, both my siblings are great people. I love them both dearly. But they have, especially my brother, to this day, he has a very hard time talking about these things. I don't
Mhm.
press him about anything. And then one day I was
Right.
over his house, and all of a sudden he started offering up some things I was shocked to hear him say.
Wow.
Um, so that was
He
one of
was
the things
ready.
that he offered up. Yes. You know,
He was ready.
Amelia, I feel so bad for him because, again, he's a great man, a good family man, has a wife and two daughters, works very hard, takes care of them, but yet still has so many emotional problems from everything
Dealing,
that has taken place.
he's
And
dealing with a lot of ghosts.
did
Yeah,
something
and
follow
it's
him back? I mean, you went on your path. Is he living maybe with something rearing its head over there every now and then?
well, I think what he lives with is he just cannot get over everything that had taken place, especially when it came to the deaths of my parents and then other
Mhm.
family members as well. We don't have a lot of family left. A lot of them are gone. And, you know, in my mother's case, she died 2 months after our beloved grandmother, her mother, Dora Harvey. She had died from a sudden series of heart
I'm
attacks. But
so sorry.
these were
That's
the two
terrible.
closest people to me in my life, my mother and grandmother, and they were
Yeah.
suddenly gone.
Yeah.
So he deals with a lot of that to where and I notice there are times if we get together over the holidays, it will come out a little bit about it's somehow after he has a few drinks, you know, it slips out that,
Yeah.
you know, the pain starts coming out a little bit about still not being able to get past these
Hmm.
horrific losses. And then, you know, there are times that he will offer snippets of information that from events that had taken place there. Another thing that he offered to me that I didn't know about, I wasn't there that day, had taken place, I want to say, in 1978 or 79. He was home that day. I went to school. Both of us missed a lot of school
Can imagine.
because of the situation.
Hmm.
And I was in school on that day. He wasn't. He was home. My mother was in her room. He was in his room. And I think my mother was ironing clothes and he was laying on the bed. And they heard the water faucet come on in the bathroom, which was a regular occurrence. The faucets would come on by themselves and just absolutely saturate with such pressure, would saturate the areas in the bathroom or the kitchen. And on this day, it was in the bathroom. So they both are heading towards the bathroom to turn the faucet off when they heard this crash, this sound of breaking glass. And so they go up the hallway and then they would make a right into the dining room area. And the back door was right off of the dining room. And there, you know, outside of the back door was a storm door. And the storm door had a screen in the top part and glass in the bottom part. And something blew the glass out from the bottom and blew it from the inside out. And
Oh.
so the glass was laying all over the back porch. And he remembered that vividly as well. So there were some things that he spoke about that I was surprised that he spoke about, but they kind of just seemed to slip, you know, and come up, and then he lets them out from time to time. But he saw quite a bit, and he suffered quite a bit, and we both had to grow up very, very quickly. After those deaths took place with my grandmother and mother, I had to quit school in the 8th grade. I lied about my age. I went to work for a construction company. I was paying $40 a week to live somewhere. And so I had to grow up very, very quickly. I grew up on the streets, hung out with the worst of the worst people. A lot of those people are dead or in prison now. I very easily could have ended up that way myself. I did drugs, I drank, I was violent, you name it. I just didn't care. I was really seeking death, to be quite honest with you. I was in so
That's
much pain.
typical of an oppressed
Yeah,
individual.
yeah,
Right?
I was seeking death. I wasn't going to slit my wrist or take pills or overdose on anything. I wanted somebody to come up and just put a gun to my head and end it all. That's really what I wanted. And I lived that way for so long until one day I had an epiphany. that A, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and B, I had this epiphany that I could do better and be better in life. I just decided to make God first in my life, and that's where everything changed. And it wasn't an instantaneous change. It was 2 steps forward, 3 steps backward, because we develop patterns. And it's very difficult to get out of those patterns, especially when you're talking about the fear-based, trauma-based way of thinking and living. It is very difficult to step out of those patterns. So it was a process for me. But the more I trusted in God and the closer that I drew to God, the closer that he drew to me, and he started to make changes in my life. And I'm so happy to tell you both, after such a horrific, life like that, childhood, even going into my adult years, God has blessed my life now 50 times more than it's ever been cursed. And I can never thank him and praise him enough for it. And I know why he chose me to do the work that I do now. It's because of all the sufferings. And so I can relate to people and they can relate to me. I can be the greatest scholar in the world and know everything there is to know about, everything when it comes to the paranormal and supernatural. But if I go into a person's home that is suffering, and I've never had the experience, how can we relate? How can that person trust in me? They can't. So there's no way for that to come together. And I have found that when people, certainly in my case, when people have suffered high levels of trauma, they are not willing to trust just anybody. They have a hard time talking about those things. So it really has to be the right person that they feel that they can trust in order to make that kind of connection.
I agree. You're essentially taking the weight for a little while, giving them a break and just taking it all on.
Yeah.
People need that. They need to know that they can rely on you. They need to know that, they can take a breath and they don't have to be the one to do the fight,
Yeah.
And it's really difficult.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, how does that affect you physically when you go into a home? I know that through prayer, and because that's what I do, and I know you do as well before going in. But how do you keep yourself from absorbing everything and taking it with you and affecting you? Because in essence, you're marked. You've been through this. They know who you are, and I firmly believe that when you go in to help someone, this entity is there because they know you will be there.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I could care less. And I say this by the power of God. If not for the calling by God and the power of God that is working through me and around me, I would never do this kind of work. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it on my own accord. So it is all by the power of God. So I have to be fearless, which I am. So I live my life in faith, strength, and courage, what I call warrior mode. And so I eliminate the fear. And by eliminating the fear, you're kicking the devil right out because he's got nothing to feed on. So the devil, he's a bully. Yeah, he deals in bully tactics. And so it is bully tactics through fear and intimidation, and then it's divide and conquer. And so once he's got the divide and conquer aspect taking place, then he goes to work on that person or persons. And the objective then is to wear them down to the point to where they have no more will to live. They don't care, no more will to fight or will to live. That's how possession takes place. When the person's worn down to that point, it's very easy. So all life operates on frequency and vibration. So when we're on high frequency, high vibration, life is good. We are moving forward. Nobody has a perfect life. Anybody that says that is a liar. So we all have a set of issues and challenges in life. That's life. The difference for me is that I know that God's with me and for me. And if God's with me and for me, then nothing is going to stand against me. So that's my approach in this. But I will say this to you, having been involved in hundreds and hundreds of these cases all over the world, there are times that certainly when you're all night somewhere and then, the sun's coming up and you're coming out, there are times that I'm so worn out after that, I've got nothing left. There are times that I have been so worn out that I would just have to get to a diner or somewhere and just sit there in silence with my head in my hands. And then God starts to recharge me. But there's absolutely nothing left in some of these situations because God's working through me so strongly. So everything that God is pouring through me, and everything that I have is going into this person in this situation. And so then it's the recharging process after that.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that you mentioned how you go even to a diner, because right there you're cleansing and clearing and recharging, so you're not bringing it home. And we were discussing this before we brought you on, was how important it is to not only protect yourself before but after. And as an empath, I pick up a lot. As a remote viewer, it still comes with me, and Michelle will attest that there are days I can't function after that.
Mm-hmm. And no, I have to message her. I'll just say, check your space.
Oh, absolutely. Are you okay? Check your space. And I'm deep in prayer and deep in thought after that. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to just recharge.
Yeah, I understand it. And again, without God,
I don't think people realize that.
No, you're right, Amelia. This is, and I've said this many times as well, and I'll say it again because it's worth repeating. If ever there were the disclaimer attached to something, do not try this at home, it would be this. I've had people that have asked me, offered me money to train them. And if I feel that it's not a calling from God, then I won't do it. There's no way. I'm not going to put anybody in harm's way. I know that God called me to do this. Mm-hmm. God doesn't call just anybody to do this. And yes, if a person is in strong faith, they can bind and rebuke and cast out to a degree. But when it comes to this level of warfare, in my opinion, it absolutely has to be a calling from God.
You're not wrong on that. I think right now within the field, and again, I always say it, people hear me say it all the time, but if it's relevant, I'm going to say it. Now with social media and television, there's a lot of people who take to that challenge. Some know better. They're like, you know what? I'm okay with researching spirits. I am not interested in delving into darker things. Other people go in there and they make things worse because they think they know what they're doing. I mean, I've been doing this 17 years. I never stop learning. Mm-hmm. And I only work in dark cases. That's what I've been doing for 17 years, and you play the part of a counselor as much as you do being on call 24/7. When something happens at 2 or 3 in the morning, it's 2 or 3 in the morning. Sometimes it's just the sound of your voice that is enough to empower somebody until you can get there,
Very true.
But there's so many people.
To know that they're not alone.
Exactly. And there's so many people out there that just throw caution to the wind because they want that manic piece of evidence. I'll use a quotation, because they think it's like, the $1 million TV show on the horizon. It's for the wrong reasons. And that's the one thing why they shouldn't be doing it, because they're not doing it for the people. They're doing it for themselves.
You'd be surprised at the amount of people from some of those shows that have come to me for help because their lives were shambles from participating in certain things. So you're right.
I would not be surprised at all. I know you're busy, man. You believe me, we see it. All you have to do is watch some of these shows and go, oh man, it's
so it's basically coming down to selling your soul to the devil for the fame and the fortune aspect. And look, it's great if you want to have a TV show, wonderful, that's great. But if you are going into situations like this, it can be deadly. If you're going into these types of situations and not focused on the true intent of helping people, and again, in my opinion, when you're getting to this kind of level, it has to be a calling from God to do this. Mm-hmm. And if you're not focused on God and the power of God working through you and over you, forget it. You are, the person that's doing this, they are putting the people that they're trying to help in harm's way, like you wouldn't believe, and themselves. Well. Yes.
Yourself as well, because you're, like you said, you're in essence selling yourself to evil, because money, when it's in that degree, not in a humble way where you're working hard for it to feed your family, but when it's excessive and it's gluttony in a sense, that is when you're going to be working through darkness, and intent is everything. If your intent is to be well off and it's me, and it's all ego, it's going to end really badly.
That's the word right there, Amelia.
I agree.
Ego. There is no place for ego in any of this.
I totally
agree. And it's humility and being a student at all times.
Being a servant.
Yeah.
Being a servant,
And
yes.
that's
And
what I
always
say. I'm
learning.
a humble servant and fierce warrior for God. So
Yeah.
it is his power. I've given over 2,000 media interviews in my career. You would never, ever hear me. If you listened to one, you've pretty much heard them all because I say a lot of the same things. And one of the things that I say is that I'm always giving praise and thanks to God, would never, ever claim any credit or glory for myself. You would never hear that or find that. So I always say it's the power of God that works through me. I'm nothing special, but God has done extraordinary things through me to help people, and I praise him for it.
You're such a perfect vessel, though, because you went through so much at such a young age and so many losses. You went through, which you had said earlier, drugs and violence and everything, that you have such a great understanding and an empathy when you're working with others. So in essence, it's a training of life training to get to where you are right now.
I agree. I totally agree. And again, looking back on some of the things, my life has been in jeopardy so many times throughout the course of my life. I've been through so many life-threatening situations, even in childhood. And God was there every single time to save me. So I'm firmly convinced that God had a plan for me. And again, not that I'm any special one, but he does assign, no man is better than another, but he does assign higher callings to certain individuals. And I'm convinced that he had a calling on my life before I even came into this world to be this spiritual warrior for him. And, it's just amazing when I look back on some of these things, because I've been in so many different types of life-threatening situations. And God has always been there to save me. And furthermore, the first battle that I engaged in against those demonic forces was at the age of 13 in 1979. So in looking back on that, I feel that God arranged that just to see if I could, in fact, be who he wanted me to be and needed me to be.
Because you could have gone the other way, like feeling forsaken and basically blaming, and why are you letting this happen, and you totally, you could easily have gone in that direction. Did at any point while any of this was going on, did you just lay blame and just say, like, what are you doing? Why are you allowing this to happen to us?
No, I never did. And it's amazing because, again, my family, my parents believed in God, but we did not have any faith-based religious type of structure, not attending church, never baptized yet, even as a little boy. And even going through the things that we went through, my first physical attack from those demonic forces took place at age 5 in 1971. So even as far back as that, I always had this blind faith in God. I knew that he was real. I knew that he was there. I knew that we were suffering bad things, but I never once blamed him for it. As a matter of fact, I just always had this kind of quiet faith that he was there. I recall one time, this is so bizarre, but everything I'm saying to you is true. I was a little boy. I want to say I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I was in my bedroom, and I want to say that it was probably somewhere near 9 p.m. on this particular evening. Now, have the visual that, here we are on the bottom of this horseshoe type of circle, and we're at the bottom. And so it's almost 9 p.m. It's a weeknight. Everybody's in. There's nobody out. And I recalled saying to God, I said, if you're real, make a horn blow. And I kid you not, within seconds of me saying that, a horn blew. And so that was it. I never questioned God ever again after that. But I found it utterly amazing that he heard me and answered that within seconds on a night, a weeknight, and here we are, nobody's out. And yet this horn blows seconds, after I have said this to him.
Yeah, funny how that works, isn't it?
Incredible.
It's one of those wow moments.
I will never ever forget that, and I never questioned him again after that. And another thing that took place that was very difficult for me, and I didn't blame God for, was I would say probably 6 months before the deaths of my grandmother and mother. I was spending the night at my grandmother's house one night, and I was sleeping on the floor. And to my right, the closet, the bedroom closet, was open. And on the back wall, never ever forget this, something woke me from my sleep. And I looked over to my right, and on the back wall, it was like this, it was gold. And I almost want to say it was almost like fire, on this gold. And it was like this gold wheel, and it looked like Hebrew type of letters on it. And I guess you could say it almost like a scrying type of thing, or some type of having the visual in the center circle. And God showed me that my grandmother and mother were going to be leaving this earth. And I was so disturbed by it. I recalled saying to him, please, I beg you, take me, don't take them, take me. I won't be able, there's no way I'll be able to endure it if you take them. Obviously he had another plan.
Well, he had to. They would have suffered greatly with you not there.
Yes, I agree. And so his will be done, but I'll never ever forget that as well. And I was so shook up and so disturbed by that. And that was about 6 months before their deaths. And my grandmother, again, had died of a sudden series of heart attacks at the age of 64. And then 2 months and 2 days later, my mother at the age of 44 died from a cerebral hemorrhage. Now, both my grandmother and mother were just so overwhelmed by the situation, because my grandmother lived about a mile away. She and my step grandfather had a 1-bedroom apartment. And we were so close with her that I'd probably call her 5 times a day. I mean, that's how close we were. And she was so upset over our situation. She did everything that she could to try and help. And my step grandfather went to his church, and they sent a Catholic priest out. We were not Catholic, but he went to them. They sent a priest out. He was involved with us for the last 16 months that we lived there. And it had got to the point to where both he and my step-grandfather were bringing mason jars full of holy water to the house. He was a regular visitor to the house. And unfortunately, and no fault of his, the activity was getting more intense and more violent and more physical, after him becoming involved. And again, that's not his fault. It's just that I think that we all came under demonic oppression at various times while living there. I can even remember times with my mother that we'd be having a conversation and we're talking just like we're talking right now. And all of a sudden, something would grab her and her whole facial expression would change. It was not her. Even her mouth and teeth seemed to change. And this would happen, I would say it was almost like a glitch that would happen for several seconds. And then all of a sudden, gone and right back to normal, like she didn't even realize what had happened.
So just going through sporadic moments of possession, basically.
Just unbelievable.
Leaves everyone else that is watching this in disbelief. And I could see why people say, oh, you're nuts. Like, this is crazy.
Well,
and you say it to yourself. But you say it to yourself as well as a child. If I saw that for a few minutes, I'd think I was imagining something. When it's happening, I can see why there would be an issue with believing, unless it's a whole family that comes together and speaks up.
Well, for me, it would last several seconds. It would probably only last for 5 or 6 seconds, and then it would just be gone, and then she'd be back to normal. But even seeing that again in my mind, just it's surreal to actually now. Of course, now I've seen just about everything you could think of, but back then, as a child, that was so unnerving to see something like that come over your own mother, and just, oh my goodness, just to see her being taken over like that for a few seconds, it was just horrible.
Now you don't realize just how easily it can happen, almost like it's a demon's way of saying, I could take her from you at any time.
Yeah.
And they do, I mean, they do. They slowly take everything from you. So
I have to tell you guys that I truly believe that those demonic forces had a hand in both of their deaths because just of the level of trauma and just the stress and the pressure of the day-to-day trying to manage this. And then I failed to mention that my mother was very ill the entire time we lived there. She was suffering from high blood pressure, which led to a series of strokes, which ultimately led to kidney failure. She was very ill. And there was a lot of pressure. My dad, when he left us, he left, and I've forgiven my father. I love my father, and I've forgiven him for everything, but I hated him for many, many years for the things that he had done. But anyway, when he had left us, he left us in a horrible way. He wasn't sending any money home. My mother was too ill to work, and we actually had to go on welfare and public assistance, and that devastated my mother as well because she was a very proud and private woman, and that just terribly devastated her that she had to go on public assistance, and it was very, very rough for us just to meet the day-to-day. We ended up losing the house. The house was auctioned off in the front yard in a public auction. And the man that bought the house knew of my mother's circumstances and situation and let us live there on a pay as you can, when you can basis. That's how we stayed. That's the most frequently asked question. Why'd you stay? Well, we stayed because there were no other options. My grandmother wanted us to come stay with her, but she and my step-grandfather had a one-bedroom apartment. My mother's sister wanted us to come stay with her.
But it would have followed, right?
Yeah, well, she had 8 children and a husband. My mother was not going to be a burden anyway. You better believe it. You could move to the other side of the world, and I tell my clients this now. You can move to the other side of the world. It's going to follow you. If it's attached, it's going to go where you go. So it's going to require someone, an agent of God, to come along, God's power working through that person to cast that garbage out and get rid of it. So
now, did it follow your dad?
Yes, absolutely.
So one followed on to him, and that's wow. So he didn't escape it either.
He tried to straighten his life out, and he would go through periods of not drinking and going to church and doing well, and then all of a sudden would revert back into that. And when he would revert back, it seemed to get worse and worse and worse. So just so sad and tragic. Both lives there, the way that they ended, very, very sad. So I look at things like that, and I have said, boy, if anything, whoever reads the books, I pray, especially if it's a young person, that they read that and go, wow, I don't want my life to be like that. And I certainly wouldn't want to go into a road of, the downward spiral of alcoholism or some type of substance abuse. And so I hope that for those that read it, they can read that and say, wow, okay, this is what not to do.
Yeah,
that's also another open door. If you're a substance abuser, even though you haven't had any interactions with malevolent entities or any Ouija boards or anything, you become an open door for them because you're so down. That's what they look for.
Correct. It's frequency and vibration. So again, through the use of alcohol and or drugs and other things, you are lowering your frequency and vibration. And when your frequency and vibration is lowered to the point of comfort for the devil, well, then they'll breach that, and you're a wide open target, sitting duck for demonic entities to come and pretty much have their way. And even during those beatings that my father was administering to my mother, you could see it. And I was witness to many of them. You could see how these demonic forces were fueling his rage against her. And it is a miracle from God that he didn't kill her.
It's got to be, when you think about how hard you work to keep helping people, to keep them from ending up in the same situation you were in, it's got to be so frustrating to see people throw it away with carelessness, like getting into the occult, for example. Thinking, that spirit communication with boards are so accessible. But now with with the telephone, you have these phone apps, you can use them as recorders to invite communication, pendulum spirit boards,
Horrible.
like there's all kinds of phone apps. now every child has a phone pretty much, at an early enough age, and you can download these apps like for free and within like seconds.
I have to tell you this, Michelle. I'm firmly convinced that we are in the last days, and in being in the last days, the devil has pulled out all of the stops, and God is allowing this, and he's allowing it for a reason, because he created us to have free will. So it's by our free will that there's an adversary to mankind in the first place. So God is allowing the devil to have this short time to have his way in the world. And what you're saying is absolutely true. They have these books now for kids on how to conjure your favorite demons and all this kind of stuff. It's all readily accessible, especially for children, because this is part of a mind programming, and it's designed to lead people away from God and call darkness light and light for dark. And the scripture tells us, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Well, that's what we're seeing right now in the world, and the devil is having a good time doing this. But I believe, and not that I know anything that anybody else doesn't know, but I believe, truly believe, that God is going to have an answer sooner than later, and there is going to be a great and terrible day. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I am telling you right now, as surely as I'm saying this, it's very important that you establish a real and authentic relationship with God, because if you do, then you're drawing close to him. And if you're drawing close to him, he's going to draw closer to you. And when you've developed a bond like that, you won't have to worry about anything, because he will have a covering over you. And despite the craziness going on in our world right now, I can have comfort in knowing that God is with me and for me. Am I immune to anything? No, but it's by the power of God that I can be, and that is his will, and I trust in him and his will be done. So therefore, that gives me a faith and a confidence to be able to share with others, to say, look, this is how God blesses me in my life. And if he would do this for me, surely he'll do it for you.
No, good point. Good point. It's very difficult to try and grab hold of a person who is in bad times. The world is a very different place right now than what it was 6 months ago.
I agree.
You have people who are losing their homes, or they've lost their jobs. The funding just isn't enough. And you're getting people who lose faith. Now, depending on which faith you follow, people have lost faith in their church, or their version of whatever religion they follow, because some are better than others. But when you lose faith, that's when I think you become the most vulnerable. Part of our job is trying to find and lead people back to their faith, wherever they draw faith from, because I've worked for 17 years with people from all walks of life. I don't go in and try to force them into any specific faith. My job is to empower them and to lead them on the right track, to clear them or get them cleared. I remember a case where I've talked about before. We waited for deliverance ministers, because she was a born-again Christian, and I reached out to a pastor friend of mine out of North Carolina, and they had a team of people who travel the world doing deliverances, and I'm thinking, wow. And we waited about 11 months for them to come in, and I always say, I've seen a lot of stuff, but this woman came in, and this thing had reached out to another location as well, that piggybacked to another home. This woman came in and started speaking in tongues. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I'm kind of going, okay, this is very weird right now. And I'm not sure how I feel about it because I'd never seen it before. And I mean, I'd seen a lot of stuff to that point. And within 2 hours, she not only cleared that home, but the other place cleared automatically.
Praise God.
Yeah,
Praise God.
And the family had been clear for quite a while. And when this thing or something else came in and reared its head again, it was easy enough for me to pop out, because it just didn't have the chance to root itself.
And that's a great point that you're making. And it's very important for people to understand this, that yes, by the power of God, these things can be cast out. However, it is your job after that to keep your foot on the devil, to keep that door closed. And again, scripture will tell us that once
saying that.
Yeah, it's the truth. I mean, and I've had some cases to where one and done, and the person never has another problem again. And then there are others that have it happen over and over and over again because they open those doors back up. So they think that they're clear, and now they can just go back to doing anything and everything that they were doing and things that opened the door in the first place. And what they don't realize is when a person's temple is cleared and when they're free from this, if they go back and open that door again, 7 more wicked than the original will come back. So they're going to be 7 times worse off. And so people really need to understand this. And we are all in spiritual warfare on a daily basis. Most people don't realize this. But once you go through something like this, and then you have the realization that, you know, hey, this really is taking place, then you have to be what I call armed and dangerous against the devil and his demons. And so I say to people, look, I can't twist your arm to do anything, nor do I want to. We all have free will. I can show you what God does for me and how I go about my daily relationship with God and what I say and what I do. And I share that with a lot of people, but I would never force it on anybody. They have to come to that by their own free will. And I always pray that they will stand in that level of what I call warrior mode, again, being in that level of faith, strength, and courage.
We were just talking about a similar situation before you came on tonight. We had a client who basically were able to clear, and she basically asked us to close the case because she says, well, I don't like how the energy feels. But once you've been dismissed, now you don't hold that much. There's that much less power that you hold. They have to want it to work with you. And she goes, I don't like how things feel. And I'm trying to explain, well, because that's how they're making you feel. You're going to get that sense of longing, that sense that you're more alone because you've always had everything around you and all encompassing. And we lost. So it's the first time I've ever had anybody say to me in my 17 years, you know, I've had people contemplate it and I'm able to bring them back from it. But it's the first time I've had somebody say after being, you know, cleared for like a couple of weeks, I just don't like how this feels. And I don't want any more work done.
Those are more divide and conquer tactics.
Yeah, what do you do now?
They are, but now what? We can't force our way in, and that makes it very difficult. And it's frustrating because I'm worried about her now and what'll happen to her. You know, it's very disturbing. And I just wanted to say something before we change the subject real quick. When you say that they can't bring things in, I believe that the audience needs to understand and know that this also means paranormal television shows, paranormal research, haunted films, horror films, slasher movies. It means anything of low level energies for a while.
I totally
because
agree.
That'll just give you that little bit back. It's like a recovering alcoholic walking into a bar and ordering a Coke. It doesn't happen. So please understand that.
It's absolutely true, 100% true. And furthermore, the devil is the prince and the power of the air, which means the airwaves. So demons can travel through electronics, through TV sets, through computers, through phones. This is reality. So after helping a person or a family, whomever it is that's affected, what I have to do after that, once I know that the person has been delivered, then I have to go through the entire home or business, whatever it is. I've even been called to churches. I've had many pastors call me to their churches where they were under spiritual attack, and God worked through me to help them and their families and their congregations. But wherever it may be, I have to go through the entire home or building after that and make sure that there are no demons hiding or lurking. So by the power of God, I have to bind and rebuke and cast them out, anoint the home, and make the entire home and property as well blessed, sealed, sanctified, purified, cleansed, and made holy before God. So there's a lot to this. There's a lot more to it than most people understand. And again, this is also another part of why it's so draining, because there are so many areas to cover.
And your job doesn't stop there. Do you find that some of these places will amp up again? Do you find yourself going? Yeah.
Yeah. And, there are some, like I said, some one time, They never have another problem again. Their home is in peace or whatever it may be, property. But there are others that do have problems. And there are some people that I've been back to 3, 4, and 5 times. One family was into the Santeria practices, and it took a while for them to finally understand they couldn't do that anymore and be a part of that. And once they did that, then by the power of God, we were able to keep everything closed. They're doing very well now. But that was a process. And again, it's very difficult for some people to abandon their way of life. Yeah. And so
you're born and raised into it.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes it's all you know. You don't know it to be wrong, but I'll tell you, we've had clients who practice also. And one of these clients, from the time she was like 3 years old, and her mother practiced that, brought her into one hell of a world of darkness. And I mean, and this girl's 40 years old now, and it's never going to be right for her. There's always darkness around her. No matter how many times you clear it, it just seems to find her. And the weirdest things happen to her. I mean, the most extreme hardships happen to her. And it's just, it's almost like you're marked, and there's nothing that anyone can really do about it, because if she can't get her mindset straight,
correct,
everything else is undermined. It just doesn't make.
Sorry, for her, it's like living in Dante's Inferno, and one of the sub-levels of hell. That's what it's like for her, and it's so unfair because she was basically a sacrifice from her parents from a small child. So it's very unfair.
But
it's unfair to do that to your children. It's one thing for you to choose that, but to bring your children such innocence into that, I don't understand it.
But see, here's what happens though. Also, when the person is so beaten down, especially mentally beaten down, because then if you're mentally beaten down, you're spiritually and physically beaten down, and it all works together. That's why it's very important to be strong in mind, body, and spirit. So when a person is mentally getting beaten down like that, they start to accept that as, oh, well, this is the way it is, and it's never going to change. And when a person gets into that kind of mindset, boy, they're in trouble, because it'll take nothing less than a miracle from God to turn around that type of mindset. And I was one of those people, and God did work a miracle transformation for me to where I was finally able, through a process, to be able to eliminate that way of thinking and living and accepting that as normal, and then stepping into the blessings that God had for me and continues to have for me. And again, when I say praise God, I mean it. I can never thank him and praise him enough for what he's done for me, and for what he's doing, and for what he's going to do for me. And I thank him and praise him for it. So I understand exactly what you're saying. I have clients like that, and it is very, very difficult.
It's hard to watch.
All I could do is try and plant good seeds with them. Again, just sharing with them how I live my life and how I go about my relationship with God. And I always pray that they'll take something from that and say, wow, okay, I understand what he's saying, that if God could transform his life in that way, well, maybe there is hope for me after all.
Yes. And I'm going to leave that right there. We're going to go for a really quick break. And when we come back, I'd like to discuss the signs of demonic oppression, or how invitations happen. And maybe we can talk about one or two of your more extreme cases and really hit it home. So let's just go to break, and we will be right back with Bill Bean. Yay.
You're back.
Welcome back to the Outer Realm. Michelle and I have welcomed Bill Bean to our show tonight. Thank you both for being here. What an insightful and educational first half. And just a little note, we want to say thank you to the people at Folgers Coffee Crystals for partially sponsoring our show tonight. Thank you, Folgers. If you're listening to me, thank you. Mwah. Okay. So back to the juicy stuff. Coffee to darkness, from black silk to blackness.
Or like black coffee. Black coffee. That works. Sure.
I wanted to just ask you a question before we continue, because I've been waiting since the beginning to ask you, because people will come to me and ask me this question, and they'll say, well, what if the person is atheist?
Well, I have been in situations like that to where I have helped people from all walks of life, from different cultures, backgrounds. I mean, whether it's been in Africa or Cairo, Egypt, or, Russia, many places around the world. And some have been atheist. Some were Satanist. And through all of that, I could think of maybe one case that comes to mind, to where the people were involved in some occultic things. And I said, look, please, you can't do this anymore. And they would not take my advice, and they would not renounce or stop doing what they were doing. But in those other cases, and I thank God for this, he worked through me to help those people to not only become free, but then to develop faith in him. So it was really two miracles that took place, because, and one right off the bat, I'm thinking of, this was a brilliant husband and wife, and they were both doctors, and they were in the scientific field. Brilliant people, and very well-to-do people, beautiful home. Everything was great, had great kids, except for they had this demonic garbage that came in. And it was really, the source was her, it was attached to her, and then it spread throughout the family. But I recall, after that deliverance took place, and you could feel the peace of God in there, but the lady was still having doubts. And we were going through the house, blessing it, and we went up into this one area, into the attic area, a very large space up there. And the three of us, her and her husband and I, were up there, and she broke down. She said, I just can't develop faith. I just can't do it. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And I normally don't do this, but I did it on this occasion. I said, Father, I ask that you please give this woman a sign. And I ask that you show her one of your giant warrior angels right now, so she will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are real and you have really worked through me to deliver her. So I prayed this, and nothing happened. And now we're standing there, and the lady's looking around, nothing's happening. And I said it again. I said, Father, I ask you, please show this woman one of your giant warrior angels so she can develop her faith. Please. Nothing happened. So now, can you imagine, inside, I'm thinking, I have really put myself out on the line here, and I can't walk away from this woman now, because if I do, it's going to destroy her. She'll be worse off than she was before I came. So I said one final time, Father, I beg of you, please show this woman one of your giant warrior angels so she will know that you are real and that this is real. And within seconds of that, she jumped up. She says, I see him. And they started appearing on the far corner in the attic. The husband saw them as well. And that changed her whole life. Sure. And I could never thank God and praise God enough for that. But through my faith, I put myself on a tightrope there, because there was no wiggle room. Had God not showed her, her faith would have been destroyed. And my credibility with her would have been destroyed as well. So thank you, Father, so that's one of many. We could go on and on and on. But yes, so I'm sorry, Amelia, I took the long way around there in answering your question.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so very much. I'm grateful because that question is given to me often. And I said, it's not often that you hear of people who are atheists in the sense that they don't believe in God or in evil. They don't believe in that kind of thing. It's not often you hear of them having these kind of incidents. So
some people don't believe at all. They believe that angels are actually extraterrestrial. There's no such thing as demons. Correct. Now you dabble. I mean, you've had UFO experiences, crypto experiences, and you believe they're all tied together.
Correct. So I firmly believe it, Michelle. And I've written a book called Stranger Than Fiction that ties it all together. And I'm working on the new version of Stranger Than Fiction. It's going to be called Stranger Than Fiction Part 2. And we're going to further connect some dots. And I'm firmly convinced of it. I believe that the source for the UFOs come from God, Yahweh, the creator of all things. And I think that why does our creator have to traverse the sky?
Back. I had a little bit of a glitch there.
I don't know, but I will say this. Psalm 68, 17 says the chariots of God are 20,000. There are 70 scriptures in the Bible that mention these flying craft in forms of cloud, pillar of a cloud, flying tabernacle, flying rolls, scrolls, etc., pillar of a cloud. So I think this is what I believe firmly, is that the devil, Hasatan, held a very high place in heaven, perhaps even like a rebel son. That's a whole other show. But I believe that God created him first. And I believe that when he created Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, the Melchizedek, the high priest of God, that's when the rebellion began. And furthermore, when he was to create mankind, he was going to have to have an adversary to mankind anyway, because he was going to give us free will and gave us free will. So when the rebellion took place, I feel that Yahweh cast the devil out through Michael and the archangel Michael and the other archangels, cast the devil out, and a third of the angels out of heaven. I believe that they were cast out in those flying craft, and they came down here to earth. They took human women, produced a hybrid offspring of giants called the Nephilim, and the Nephilim went into the forest and had unnatural sex acts with the beasts of the field, apes and bears and dogs and other things, and that became the Bigfoot Sasquatch creatures. They're every bit as much supernatural as they are a physical type of being. And so it's just a matter of connecting all the dots. And furthermore, I feel that when God created the great flood, some of those, the Benai Elohim, the sons of God that came down and then produced that offspring called the Nephilim, some of those escaped the planet in those flying craft to places like Mars. And that's why you have statues and pyramids and monuments on Mars and other places, because they escaped the earth to those places. And then when the floodwaters receded, they came back. And so I believe that there has been a satanic seed line on this planet for as long as there has been the seed line of Yahweh. And he allows this again. And some people would call me a heretic, and they'd say, this guy's talking nonsense. Well, that's their right to do so. But I don't follow any man or any narrative. I really rely on God. And I believe that God has blessed me with wisdom and knowledge far beyond anything that I could ever imagine in my life. Feel that strongly that these entities are still on the earth. And I feel that the UFO aspect of things, look, I've had many divine experiences pertaining to UFOs, many, and I praise God for that, but I've had many demonic experiences as well. So I know that some of them are divine, some of them are demonic. Some of these vehicles are back engineered by our governments now, and some perhaps are coming from somewhere else out there, because in the vastness of everything that Yahweh created, wouldn't he make life in other places? And if that's the case, then perhaps some of that, those life forms have come to look in on us as well. So there are four factors to this, and I firmly believe it. And I could say it confidently because of the amount and level of experience that I've had in this area.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a whole other show. I'll have to bring you back.
Yeah.
Because that can go off in many different directions.
We do have you coming back, though.
Yeah.
That's right. We do.
Yeah.
I have my book.
We can handle that.
My poor brain is on
I have the
all
calendar
the
in front of me. That's why.
Okay, good, because my brain is like. Let's back up 1 minute. Let's go back to signs. How does someone know when they have been infiltrated if they are not aware? I mean, you have the obvious, we're going to try to conjure up a demon, that's the obvious, or you're knowingly going into a location that is known to have malevolent activity. Yeah. But let's just say you're just an everyday person who doesn't go looking for trouble, but somehow you find it.
Yeah. And I've got 14 examples right here, and there are more, but these are general. The person is experiencing, starts to have these types of supernatural demonic experiences, and then the attacks. And again, if they're having it, then something has triggered it, something has opened the door. And I find that in a lot of my cases, not all, but in a lot, this really stems from childhood, from heinous and wicked acts that raise the level of trauma, through the roof. And usually that entails child molestation, some type of really wicked and heinous act that would get a person to that level of trauma, because then the demons will, obviously they are filling the perpetrator to carry out such a wicked and heinous act, but then they will go on to the victim, because I believe that when a high level of trauma is reached, blood and secretions will come out of the pineal gland and the adrenal glands. And demons feed on that like candy, and they will stay on that victim until an agent of God comes along, God working through that person to get rid of it. So that's where it starts. And then the divide and conquer starts with the victim withdrawing from family and friends. They can get into a deep depression and start to have the feelings of hopelessness. They could have sudden fits of rage, violence, hatred, and anger. They could start abusing drugs and or alcohol. They could be listening to satanic music, addicted to watching the evil movies and TV shows, like Amelia was saying. And then having these flashbacks, whether it be through dreams or even like daydreams, wanting to sleep all the time, wearing black clothing every day, and just everything is black and black and black, and surrounding themselves, look, I'm not,
I'm always
down
black.
Everybody else down.
I'm in trouble.
But that's different though.
Yes,
that's how it means like in a heavy goth way.
Yeah, when they're under that low frequency and low vibration, man, that's so their whole world is dark and black.
And everything, the makeup, very extreme.
All part of frequency and vibration being lowered. So then, again, they're wanting to keep their home and room very dark at all times. Some people paint their windows black and their walls black. I've seen it. And then participating in occult practices, having the feeling of being cursed. And then obviously wanting nothing to do with God or Jesus, and just absolutely to the point of offense. Yeah. And then they're just shutting it out, shutting it down. One case is coming to mind right now. This young man in Delaware, and this was probably the first heavy duty case of demonic possession that God worked through me to free the person. But he was an example there to where he had, suffered molestation as a child, and then was bullied and just had a hellish life as a child, and then felt that God had abandoned him, and he decided that he was going to literally make a deal with the devil. And in that, he felt empowered, and then he joined up with a satanic coven, and he started doing ritual sacrifice of animals, and then started putting curses and hexes and vexes and spells on people. And so then he became possessed. and started attacking his family members. And that's when they called me in, because they were afraid that he was going to kill somebody. So that was the first real heavy duty exorcism that I performed. And let me tell you, that was, again, if not for the power of God working through me, it could have went a really bad way.
That's what the darkness wants, correct? It's a soul, whether it's yours or someone you get it for them, it's a soul.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I can recall during the process of that, he was, God was working through me to wear the demons down. And in wearing them down, I would start to talk to him. I never have a conversation with the demon. And I'll tell you why. Because the only dialogue I have with the demon or demons is taking power and authority over them and binding and rebuking them and casting them out. If you engage in dialogue, in my opinion, with a demon or demons, you're never going to get the truth, and they are leading you.
They're liars.
So they're going to lead you into the trap. The more communication and dialogue you have, the further into the trap you're going. And so I don't have any dialogue other than taking power and authority over them. And believe me, they've tried to have lots of dialogue, and I shut them right down and tell them to be silent.
It's all about attention, isn't it? It's me.
Yes.
It's like a child. It's like a petulant child. You really have to beware, because they know everything about you, and they will say things to you to lure you into the conversation, to lower your wall. So you really have to be careful. It's very important to ignore them.
I agree.
You lose power when you start speaking.
Absolutely. And that's what it's designed to do, to suck the person in and to really, so it's a trap, and they lead the person closer and closer to the trap. And if the person continues to engage, then all of a sudden they find themselves in a position being victim themselves. So I always caution people against that. And you would never, ever see me having that kind of dialogue, other than to take power and authority over them, to tell them to be silent and continue to be authoritative. And so the roles reverse. When I go into a situation like this, the devil, when he's got a foothold and when he is oppressing or possessing somebody, they're the bully on the block. He's the bully. Those demons are the bully. They have taken control of the situation. Well, then I come in by the power of God, and I'm not boasting this of myself. I'm saying by the power of God, I have to be the bully. I have to be the one that takes control and now power and authority over the situation. There is no other way. You cannot be defensive in a situation like that.
They're living in a hostage situation.
Yeah.
And they end up having, we find even when we clear somebody, they're still living in that state of mind where, you're afraid to do anything because you've been under its thumb for so long.
It's like,
so how does, okay, we've gone through the signs to look for. So now we're going to go through the infestation period, where things slowly start happening, because you may not still realize at this point, you're not versed, or you don't know that, okay, our family is dividing, we're always fighting. You're knowing that something's going on. You may attribute it to stress, but now you're going to start getting into that infestation, those little things that start happening that are we deem supernatural or paranormal.
Absolutely.
So what are the typical signs of that?
Well, a feeling of presence, number one. We can feel these things and an atmospheric change in the room. And sometimes people say, and I know from my own experiences, it may get very cold. It could even get hot. And it could also have these smells, these terrible smells that accompany this. And also popping noises. So if you're hearing that is an entity coming through a portal. And when the portal closes, it's causing that popping noise.
Yes.
And
that's my whole upper level, like every day, all day. Sorry, when you're like, I'm like.
Or tearing sounds like coming through the atmosphere. Static lights, I find also.
Absolutely. And in our case, with that paneling, you would often hear like tapping on the walls, and it would be as if someone was taking a finger and flicking it. And then there were times that like someone was taking a fist and hitting the wall. So I feel that all these things are designed to confuse. And when a person gets into that level of confusion, they start to get in fear as well. That's the ultimate goal, is to get the person in the fear-based, trauma-based way of thinking and living then they can have their way, because now the person through the fear has the frequency and vibration lowered, and then these forces can start to feed off of that and become empowered.
Yes. Yes. So we go from infestation, all the sounds that are designed to make you crazy, like tapping for like 10 straight hours, or, or guerrilla warfare, little things here and there. What's next?
Well, when it's going to the next levels, then people could start to maybe in some cases, hear voices, hear someone calling out to them, which is a familiar spirit. That's a devil in disguise. It's a demonic entity that is taking the voice or even the form of a loved one. So that happens often. There could be instances to where the not only having the horrific dreams, but then kind of carrying over the dreams sort of start to become reality. And then, so a person's already traumatized when they've had a horrible nightmare of something like that. And then when that starts carrying over into reality, and a piece from that dream actually takes place in the real, with the person wide awake, that really further leads to the frequency vibration being lowered, and then the level of fear that is now taking over the person. And some people get attacked, and I've seen physical attacks, not only in my own story, but since becoming a deliverance minister. People can get scratched, they can get bitten. There are, unfortunately, sexual demons that do horrific things in that way. There are entities that are slug-like that attach to people, and they attach in their backs, and it feels like almost like electrified tentacles that dig into the skin. People report things like that. There are also serpent type of entities, and one that comes to mind, everything I'm saying, there's a case that comes to mind, but one involving that took place with a very prominent doctor who was ready to commit suicide until he was flipping through the channels and happened to see me on TV. Then he contacted me, and God guided me there to help him. But God showed me that there was a very large snake wrapped around him, and it was like burrowing into his armpit. And it was on his right arm and burrowing into his armpit. And I didn't say anything. I performed the exorcism over the man in his bathtub, and then I baptized him after that. And let's just say that it was something that, in part, that you would see from a horror film. But when everything was over with, the man said to me, and again, I didn't say a word to him about what God showed me. And he said to me, he says, I felt like it was a snake, and the snake was being taken off of me. And that's exactly what I saw, that it was a large snake, and it was burrowing into his armpit. And I saw the angels killing it and unwrapping it and removing it from the man's arm and carrying it off. And the man was describing similar things to me. I didn't say a word to him, and he was describing. So it was all confirmation as the man was describing what God showed to me. It was quite amazing. And I was so thankful, because that man, he, without saying too much, because again, he's a prominent doctor.
Of course.
He had someone close to him performing voodoo against him.
Oh.
And this person had gone to a witch doctor, and they were doing some horrific things to this man. And I just praise God for working through me to help him, because he was giving them money. He was doing anything and everything to try and get them to stop. And the more that he did that, the more that they did to him. And thank God, because he was definitely at the point to where he was ready to just end his life. He couldn't endure it.
So, you have somebody projecting this energy and sending stuff over, and you're able to remove it, but it doesn't stop them from starting over. So how do you work around that?
Yeah, well, in that case, what I do is when I'm praying over a person like that, by the power of God, I would say by the mighty power of Yahweh in his mighty and holy name, in Jesus' name, I sever all ungodly soul ties. So that means that by the power of God, we are severing that connection to where they cannot send anything like that anymore. And I ask God to keep that person galvanized against any further attacks in that way. And may God keep the person in his hedge of protection 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for life. And anyone that would try and do anything against that person again, may it bounce off of that person back onto the sender sevenfold.
So essentially, you are asked to create a shield around.
Yeah, absolutely. So whether you want to call that an energy field, a suit of armor, whatever you want to call it, whatever that may be, if someone is sending something like that, then by the power of God, we want it to literally bounce off of them and back to the sender sevenfold.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Why 7? We asked the guest this question as well. Why 7?
7 is a number of completion. So 7 is a godly number, a number of completion. So where we see 3 6s, we know what that is. It is a mark of the beast. So 7 is the number of completion.
Yeah, I believe that. I see
333 a lot. And 1111. Those are my numbers.
333 is actually a divine number. It's a very good number. And
11 and 111, 1111. Those are my numbers constantly.
Yeah,
no matter what I'm looking at.
And some people would disagree with me when it comes to 1111, but I firmly believe that it is a divine number. And I think that it is God trying to get our attention about something when we see that number a lot.
Absolutely, because I always see it when I'm questioning myself about something.
Yeah.
So that is. I question myself. It could be anywhere. It could be on a television. It could be on anything, a credit card, anywhere. All of a sudden, that's what I'll see. And then I'm like, okay, I've got this. I heard you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a form of communication between God and you. If I'm troubled by something and I can't get it, because I don't trust any man to give me answers, and not that I'm better than anybody, but I do not follow any man. I was born to be a leader, and therefore I follow God only. So I have to take matters to God when I'm troubled by something or I need an answer. So what I'll do is, if I'm really in need of some type of answer, I will take the Bible and I'll just sit it on my desk and leave it closed like that. And I'll close my eyes and I'll randomly flip it open. And in most cases, my answer will be on one page or the other. So that's taking it to God and trusting in him. And he's always, so when we have that level of faith, it's blessed assurance in knowing that no matter what happens, God will make a way. He makes the impossible possible. He's done it for me so many times, I've lost count. So not that I'm perfect. I'm certainly not, or do I claim to be. Not that my life is perfect, because it is not. I have a set of issues and challenges in life just like everybody else. That's life. However, when an issue, a situation, a challenge should arise, I have blessed assurance in knowing that God's with me and for me, and he will make a way for me. So I don't have to worry. I know that he'll be there with me and for me to get me through whatever situation that may be.
So essentially, it's just knowing the signs, because some people would think to themselves, well, how do I know? Because, you've lost faith, right? Going through, some of these horrendous things.
Sure.
And it's a matter of recognizing the signs. So what are the typical signs if you're going to reach out? Because some people get desperate and they're like, please show me something. How is an appropriate way to ask, and what's something that they can ask for themselves if they don't have a veiled being?
Well, the appropriate way to ask is that just keep it real with God. So there's a lot of people that say, oh, I'm a Christian, or I'm this, and I have faith, and I'm this, and I'm that. And Jesus said, your lips honor me, but your heart is far from me. So if we're having a real and authentic relationship with God, and again, we're not perfect. We can never be perfect. We're in a sin-filled world, so we can never be perfect. God loves us in spite of ourselves. We just have to keep it real with God. So if there's a person out there that is having trouble and wants a sign, well, then ask God for a sign. Get on your knees first and repent. So even today, to this very day, if I make a mistake, and I realize it is not pleasing to God, I will get on my knees and I'll ask him to forgive me for that, whatever it may be. And a blessing always follows that. So come back to God as a little child and get on your knees and ask for forgiveness, and he will reward that with blessing and favor and answers. A lot of times also, people will report back to me that after the deliverance has taken place, they start to see these white balls of light or like Arctic blue. These are angels that now, and I ask in these deliverance exorcisms, I ask for God to send 50 giant warrior angels to that person, to their family, to their home, all connected to them, to their property. So I say blessings over the land. I say blessings over the home, even the pets. It's very important to cover all the bases, and then God will give these people some confirmation after it's over with to let them know that they are okay and they're going to be okay. The worst thing that a person could do, and it's quite natural to say it, is to say, yeah, but what if? Yeah, but what if it comes back? That is a very natural thing to say, especially if you're in the fear-based, trauma-based way of thinking.
But you're leaving your foot in the door, essentially.
Correct. You're not in full faith. If you're questioning, then you have not stepped over to the uncharted waters of faith. And the way I always looked at it was standing on a diving board, getting ready to dive into ice cold water. You know, you really don't want to do it.
Nobody wants to do that.
Right, exactly. But once you do it, then it all makes sense. And then you're going into something totally new and different. You're able to adapt to it. So that's the way you're literally diving into that. And it is a whole new chapter, new season. And that's what I want for these people, is a brand new chapter and a brand new season in their lives with a clean slate, walking in peace, freedom, and victory, and having blessed assurance that God is with us and for us. So for me, in my life, I am committed to God. He is number one in my life and always will be. So if I have that level of commitment to God, that means I'm committed to excellence. If I'm committed to excellence, that means I refuse to lose. I declare victory in each and every day of my life, and I will do so for the rest of my life. Why? Because of the power of God that I'm invoking and activating over my life in each and every day of my life.
Do you find you're having more difficulty with COVID because you can't go to everybody's homes, and they're seeing you like an image on a computer right now, as opposed to getting you in person? Are you noticing, is it just as effective, or are you just having to work harder at,
and that's a great question, Michelle. And yes, since the COVID junk started, I have virtually stopped my traveling. And look, it's not, and I praise God for this, I don't get sick, and he's kept illness away from me for many, many years. However, we're not to tempt God. So I could say to you, Michelle, I have such great faith that I could go walk out in the street there and right in front of a truck, and, it won't run me over because, God will stop that. Well, that's foolish. That is tempting God. And when Satan told the devil, or the devil told Jesus, jump off the cliff, God will save you, he said, it is not good to tempt God. We can have strong faith, and I do have strong faith. However, I'm not foolish in tempting God. I know this is a very real thing. I believe it's a bioweapon. That's, again, a whole other show.
It sure is.
But it's very real. And I've had family members in Florida right now that have it and are very, very ill. And I had a family member recently, my second cousin, just died from this a few weeks ago.
Oh, so sorry.
And so it's thank you. It's very real. People are getting this. It just drives me crazy when there's people that say, oh, this is all a hoax. Well, it's not a hoax. And this is, was it a created bioweapon in a lab? Probably.
Doesn't matter how it got here. We're all in this together now.
It's here.
I believe that's what they're confusing when they say this is a fake virus. What they mean was it was man-made and planted. Yeah. I believe that's what they're trying to say, but they're so lost in the politics that they're and so lost in being right and angry. I can't even be on Facebook right now. The news feed just turns my stomach to know.
It's very sad. And then there are a tremendous amount of people that come to me for prayer for either them or their loved ones that have it. And so, all you have to do is look at my Facebook page and you see how many people that, come to me for prayer. And in doing the show every Sunday, I have a list of people that I pray for on the show as well. And so, yes, I have scaled back my traveling. I'm doing everything via Skype right now. And it is the next best thing to be in there. And it's very effective. And I praise God for that, because just as we're connecting right now in this way, we're not physically together in the same room, but we are together and we are having a dialogue. We're seeing each other and we hear each other. So it is the next best thing to being there. And praise God.
Exchange of energy as well.
Yes.
Yes. An
I
exchange
totally
of
agree.
energy.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, we have a lot of listeners, so I'm really hoping that they're taking your message seriously. And as there are some people out there that need to, and there are some people who figure they're invincible.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're in troubled times. I think any bit of positive information or positive vibrations is needed and should be gratefully accepted. I think if everybody raised the vibration, can you imagine what kind of a state of consciousness we would be in right now?
The world would change overnight.
That's why I can't be on Facebook, because everybody's posting about COVID being this and COVID being that. And I'm like, let's replace those, because we all watch the news when we need to have an update. I don't need to see it on social media. If I did, I'd go to the news source itself. What I say to my family and my personal friends, take that out and replace it with something positive. Let's raise the vibration of the world.
That's
raise those frequencies rather than continue spewing out negativity, because you're adding to it. I'm receiving it, and then I'm amplifying it and sending it out to everybody I deal with. And it's exactly what evil wants. So just flip that around. And when you go to send something and share something on Facebook that has to do with COVID, take it out and find an inspirational post or an inspirational meme or a prayer, whatever it is that helps you raise your frequency, and post that instead. I guarantee your friends and family will change for the better for it, and they'll love you for it.
I totally agree. Do you guys remember a movie that came out in, I think it came out in 87 or 88. It was called They Live.
Yes.
You remember that? Roddy Piper? Okay, so I believe that we're living that right now. And I wouldn't doubt for 1 second, if not through CERN and some of these other devices that are around the world, and certainly there are plenty of them in America right now. I wouldn't doubt for a second if some of those devices are not pumping out a negative signal that is going on to the masses. And this is part of the devil's entrapment right now. So we have the masses
right in here.
Absolutely being
I'll tell you a story when you're done about that. You're going to be
very surprised. I want to hear that.
And now you've got them in the airwaves. Now you've got them in satellites, and you've got it just.
It's a saturation, which becomes
television.
A mind manipulation and a brainwash. And this is where we are right now as a society, and not just in America, but around the world. And this is a phenomena in itself, and it is happening, and it is going to continue to happen until.
But try to prove it. All the naysayers are like, you're crazy, you're crazy.
I say, God bless them. They got to open their eyes.
Yes.
The only thing is, there's this little guy who's living in Russia who escaped America named Snowden, who started to blow the whistle on this when he worked for the CIA. Yeah. So remember that when you're looking for a film, it's rather than watch Contagion and put yourself in the spin, watch Snowden. It's his story. He comes on at the end. He comes on at the end and he speaks. So you know it's him. When you watch this and you think about this is when MySpace was just starting out. Yeah. And what he leaked, he's the biggest whistleblower in the world right now, and the youngest whistleblower, one of the youngest to be in the CIA working there, and for a reason. Then you cannot say that it's not true. I can tell you, I told Michelle yesterday, I was in complete shock. I was flipping through the TVs. I'm recovering from an illness, and I was flipping through the television, and the show came on that I literally boycotted a year ago. And it was like 5 minutes of it. I'm like, okay, I'll just leave it. It's going to end. And then the next show is going to come on. I don't like daytime television per se.
Yeah. Oh.
So I'm waiting for it to finish. It's too much drama for me. So I'm waiting for it to finish. I go on Facebook to promote last night's show. And doesn't their Facebook page come into my newsfeed saying I liked it and I never did?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't want to see this.
They're doing stuff like
I'm like,
that.
why am I watching this?
Yeah.
But my phone, and it's just, you know,
right.
or you can say something. I've spoken
See
to
what I
Michelle
still have
about
here?
something.
I don't have those
Yes.
phones. I got this little teeny tiny flip phone.
Smart
My
man.
husband the same way. My husband's the same way. I think
Smart
he's
man.
still even analog. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I, there's another time where Michelle and I were together sitting down, and I said, we were talking about something. I go, watch, and we go in and it's right there.
Oh yeah.
And I said, you have to be
They're
so
listening. Of course
Yes, they are.
Everybody is. They have
Of course.
keywords that they pick up on. But
Darkness
seriously,
is
watch
always
Snowden. We'll
listening.
do a show about it.
Yeah.
Talk about a
Yes.
conspiracy theory.
Oh, it's very,
Wow.
very true. And I pray that more people will wake up, because knowledge is power. And when your eyes are wide open and you understand what's going on around you, that'll change your world. You know, right now, the masses and the way the world is structured, unfortunately, the world is made up of mostly followers. And there are very few leaders, and there's very few good leaders. And so therein lies the problem. So the masses are led into anything and everything. And furthermore, I really believe that the root of this, whether this COVID is a bioweapon, like I strongly believe it is, its mission and purpose is for one thing and one thing only, and that is to get the masses vaccinated. And that is part of the mark of the beast. And then they will take the chip, which will be solidify that. And make no mistake, and I'm not saying this to scare anybody, but I'm saying it out of truth. If you take this and this, you are cut off from God. There is no repenting. There's no coming back. It's final, because you will become a part of the beast system, which will make you transhuman. So you'll be every bit as much or more of a machine than you will be a person.
See, this is a question now that I get from people, because many people believe that they are a spirit, a soul on a human journey, not the other way around, not a human on a spiritual journey. So if the body ends up getting into trouble or gets up vaccinated, it doesn't change the spirit, because this body will cease to be and the energy will move on.
I wish I could believe that, Michelle, but again, this comes down to free will. I know, but this comes down to free will. And when so God gave us free will. And so when we freely choose to do something, and certainly something of that magnitude, there's no moving on. The only moving on is going to be into the devil's kingdom and into that beast system. And you have people out there now like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and others that are talking about trying to capture the soul now so they can download that. And when you have these types of people talking about things like that, you know we're right around the corner from something very momentous.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I believe that when you're hearing them speak about it, it's because they've already done something.
Correct.
That never leaked carefully.
Yes.
And you also
It'll
have
give
to
a whole
remember
other
that
meaning.
Gates is also, his wife is also, and I don't care if you're listening, is also into depopulation.
Oh yeah, well they all are. They all are. I mean, these people have these roundtable discussions, and they've been doing it for the last 30 years or more, including people like Oprah Winfrey and all these type of world leaders that come in, and they all sit down around these roundtables and discuss the depopulation agenda and what they can do to implement this and implement that.
Look at the Georgia Guidestones.
Exactly.
Right? People just hang on that. And I'll tell you that capturing consciousness for AI gives you a whole other term to the meaning afterlife. Doesn't it?
You better believe it. And it's not going to be a good afterlife. And see, this is what happens, Michelle. And again, this is for another show. I know we're running out of time, but in my opinion, I feel that the devil has control of the world, and it's by the permission of God. So if you go back to the book of Job, you see that the devil reports into him, and God says to him, "Where have you been?" He says, "I've been roaming the earth to and fro in the dry places." So we see there that the devil is still subservient to God. That's why I see him as a rebel son. And that's why I see that why God doesn't destroy him, because he is like a rebel son, or is a rebel son. Anyway, be that as it may, he thinks God has given him this time. So he thinks this is his world right now. So he is trying to change the world. And just as God, when he created the world, he created us in his image, after his likeness, after his kind. Well, the devil's trying to recreate us in his image, after his likeness, after his kind. So what he's trying to do is take as many people with him as possible before this all comes down and God says enough. And boy, is there ever going to be a day of reckoning then. So this whole thing is designed to capture the masses. And the only way that you can do that is to herd them in and have them freely accept this mark. And by doing so, now he is going to take all these people with him. And it's so sad and unfortunate, it really is. All I could do is come on shows like yours and talk about this and share what I believe to be true. And people, look, you don't have to, for those out there watching right now, you don't have to believe a word that I'm saying, but I urge you to do the research for yourself. Pray first and ask God if what I'm saying is true. Secondly, do the research for yourself and ask God to guide you to this information, and he will. And the truth will set you free. And this is where we are right now. We are on the cusp of all this coming together, and it is the total manipulation of the mind and the brainwash of having the people say, well, I can do anything. I don't have to pay attention to this or that. I mean, I'm free. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to worry about that. And I'm good to go. So the devil doesn't care if you believe in him or not. He wants you to believe in you. He wants you to be in the ego, puffed up. It's all about you. You're going to get to the top no matter how many bodies you got to step over. It doesn't matter, because it's all about you. So the devil is selfish, and he wants you to be selfish. Jesus was selfless. He would do for others and put everybody before himself. There is the difference.
Well, unfortunately, on that note, it's like, come on, October the 8th.
Yeah.
We do have you back on October the 8th. Yes, and yeah, that's a whole other list of questions, because I could keep going with this one, believe me. But with that being said, I have to sign us off, and I will do so by thanking everybody who's tuned in, and big thank you, big hug, Bill Bean. Loved having you on. It was
my honor and pleasure.
Oh, such a pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thank you to Joe Montaldo for taking amazing care of us as always. Huge thank you to Folgers Crystals, who partially sponsored tonight's show. So please tune in next Wednesday and Thursday evening, as we'll have 2 more amazing guests. And until then, Amelia and I bid you all a good night.
Good night, all.
Thank you, guys.